Hello, everybody. It's the Historical Gamer once again, and today we're going to be taking a look at the top 5 upcoming strategy games in 2019. I hope all of your New Year's are off to a great start. It is the second day of the new year. Yesterday we looked at my top 5 upcoming war games for 2019, but I actually had quite a few games that I'm excited about that are coming out this year, and I thought rather than doing just one sort of top 5 upcoming list, I would do two, and I would break out the games by war game and strategy game. So yesterday, the war game list is what I put together. Today's list will be the strategy game list, and then tomorrow we'll jump back into Strategic Command World at War, because I've got a couple of videos of that queued up as well. That series will restart tomorrow, but for the moment, let's take a look at the top 5 upcoming strategy games in 2019. At number 5, and as always, guys, this list is in no particular order. It's just I'm counting down from 5 to 1, but 1 may not be the most anticipated, and 5 may not be the least anticipated. And that's because number 5 is a game that I'm really interested in, and I think is kind of intriguing, and that is a game called We, the Revolution. We the Revolution is a game that's being developed by Polystash, is the actual developer of the game, and then the publisher is going to be Clawbater, and I'm not sure if I'm getting those pronunciations right. But this is a game which is kind of in the vein of Papers, Please, with a little bit more control for your player and your outcome, I think. This is a game that is putting you in the shoes of a judge in revolutionary France, during the 18th century, so the late 18th century during the French Revolution. You are a judge during the French Revolution, and essentially that's a really appealing concept if you know anything about the French Revolution. Essentially, you're going to be in charge of tribunals, which are going to be ruling on the guilt or the innocence of various people, some of who may be counter-revolutionaries striving against the cause of the revolution. Maybe they're monarchists and they're striving for the restoration of the king, or maybe they're innocent bystanders caught up in, frankly, the chaos and the terror of the French Revolution. And you are going to be a judge that sits on trials, and you have to make decisions based on what comes up in those trials. So the game will have courtrooms. You'll be the judge proceeding. The prosecution will lay out the case. The defense will lay out the case. And you will need to ask questions, make decisions, and figure out what is the right outcome for this case. And you'll be able to rule guilt or innocence based on a myriad of factors. Do you really think this person is guilty? Does that matter? Are you a conniving political being who would rather boost your standing with the mob by sending an innocent person to the guillotine so that you might gain status or credibility? Or is maybe ruling the guilt or the innocence of a noble person who's standing in the way of your rise to power something that you're willing to sacrifice your soul to gain a little bit more power? This is not just a game of hearing out court cases and making decisions. This is a game where your decisions will impact yourself, your career, your power, impact your family, their future, impact the revolution as a whole. So in this game, it's very much a life or death decision, maybe for the person in front of you, but I'm assuming maybe also for yourself. You'll see the French Revolution, and they're saying that they're really trying to capture the oppressive atmosphere of the French Revolution from novels such as Alexandre Dumas and Joseph Conrad. You're going to have, according to this, dozens morally ambiguous cases. You're in charge of the courtroom. You need to make friends of rival factions vying for power. Make them your associates or disappear, as the game says. This game is claiming that it's a mix of genres, blending case building with intrigue crafting and turn-based tactics. And I think you can see a little bit of that here in the footage that I've got in front of you. That's been provided for the trailer. This is a really interesting game, and it's apparently not totally tied down to history. It is a symbolic story. It's loosely based on history events from the time, but it's really an intriguing and interesting look at the French Revolution. The game is coming out in March of 2019. It's actually scheduled to come out on March 21st of 2019, and it is going to be on Steam, and it's a game that I think looks like it has a ton of appeal, a ton of potential. I'm really excited about it, And yeah, again, it seems to have a bit of a vibe of like a Papers, Please type scenario, but in the era of the French Revolution. So I'm excited. Let me know your guys' thoughts. Is this something you're looking forward to? But I know I am. Anyway, guys, that's enough for this game. Let's move on to the second game on our list at number 4. Total War 3 Kingdoms is the second game we'll be talking about today, and that is going to be, I believe, the 12th full-length version of a Total War game. It's coming out this March of 2019 as well, so whereas We the Revolution is coming out toward the end of March, on March 21st, Total War 3 Kingdoms is slated to come out on March 7th of 2019. This is going to be the first game to ever look at China. Total War has taken an exhaustive look at Europe. They've looked at Europe during the Roman Age, the Middle Ages, and even during the Imperial Ages during Empire and Napoleon. But never before has Total War looked at China. They have been to Asia before. They have looked at the Shogun period in Japan twice, Shogun 1 and 2. But never before have they actually crossed the Sea of Japan and looked at the Chinese mainland. And I think that in of itself is an interesting concept for them to be covering. And I think the other exciting piece is in Total War 3 Kingdoms, they're going to be looking at China during the Romance of the Three Kingdoms period, or the three, as you would guess from the name, the Three Kingdoms period, which essentially covers... well, I guess it's kind of complicated. The Three Kingdoms period is recognized as covering 220 AD until 280 AD or CE, however you're measuring that. However, really the prelude to that period starts at around 190, and the game is starting at 190. So essentially in 190, the Han Dynasty is about to fall apart. The Emperor is like 8 years old, is being manipulated by sort of his... I don't know technically what he's called. I guess he'd be the regent of the kingdom, Dangzhou, who is a tyrant and manipulating the emperor for his own gain, for his own power. And this sets off a series of rebellions and revolts against Dangzhou's authority. And a group of warlords come together to form a coalition to overthrow him. And this kicks off a 30-year period of war from about 190 to around 220. At 220, the warring kind of shifts, and three kingdoms have sort of risen to the top as the three preeminent powers to have overthrown Dangzhou, and then also to be vying for their own place in the sun, if you will. And that period lasts for about another 60 years to around 280 at the establishment of, I believe, the Jin dynasty. Which starts, around, I guess 265 is when the Jin dynasty starts. The Three Kingdom period ends in 280. So, long story short, there's about a 90-year period of time where this Three Kingdoms game, I'm assuming, is going to cover. I haven't seen the actual end date listed yet, but it does seem to be a little bit more of a focused Total War game. In addition to that, the game also appears to be heavily leaning on interpersonal relationships and diplomacy. To get the Three Kingdoms period right, you really have to do that. The key to this period was relationships between the different warlords in China, their ability to work together, sometimes their willingness to betray each other. And Total War 3 Kingdoms is claiming that in battles, based on how battles unfold, it will impact your relationship with other AI characters who may be your allies. In addition to that, they're claiming there's sort of a paradigm shift in the way they manage relationships and diplomacies, so it'll be interesting to see how that all works out. I haven't seen a ton of actual detail about the game. There's been several trailers, there have been, screenshots and all that listed, but, it doesn't give me a ton of new information about the feature list here. I mean, obviously, the real-time and turn-based strategy and the real-time combat is a hallmark of Total War games since time immemorial. There's a sort of a attention to art quality, which is going to be interested. They're saying there's this Zhongxi system, and I'm sure I'm mispronouncing that. In the description here on Steam, it says it's modeled on Zhongxi, the Chinese concept of dynamic interrelationships. Total War 3 Kingdoms takes a paradigm-shifting approach to character agency, with iconic larger-than-life heroes and their relationships defining the future of ancient China. Each of these characters is brought to life with their own unique personality, motivations, likes, dislikes. They also form their own deep relationships with one another, both positive and negative, that shape how your story plays out. So, I'm really interested to see what that means from a gameplay perspective. I do hope that they did really invest a lot in diplomacy, in relationships, and figuring out how to make this work, because if they're really trying to make the Three Kingdoms feel right, relationships and sort of player agency is going to be important. But if they kind of go the traditional Total War route, that's all going to be fluff, and it's really going to come down to just, all right, let's fight a bunch of real-time battles. They're also trying to say that the battles themselves are individually much more impactful, not just for the battle results, but for your relationships with the other characters, the other parties. And I think that's kind of interesting. Honestly, I think the thing that excites me the most is the Three Kingdom period is not a very long period of time, and it also is a pretty well-defined story, if you will, and a pretty well-defined narrative. And I think the Total War games that do the best are the games that really hone in on what they're trying to do, that narrow focus, that narrow period of time. In my opinion, to this day, Napoleon Total War is still one of the best Total War games ever. And unlike Empire, which tried to cover the whole globe over hundreds of years, Napoleon was telling like a 20-year-old, a 15-year-old story in a narrow sort of focus. And so if they kind of go that route with maybe a little bit more open worldness than Napoleon, then I think that bodes well for this game. If they try and cover everything over, a very broad sense of time, then it may end up being another Rome 2 Total War. But we'll see. I'm excited about it. I'm interested to learn more. The game comes out in about 3 months, and I guess, we'll certainly see how it looks and how it plays when it comes out. But that's about all I have to say about this game. I'm excited about it, and we'll see what happens. With that being said, let's move on to the third game on our list. Field of Glory Empires is the third game on our list. It's going to be developed by Ajod Games, and it's going to be published by Slytherin Software, Slytherin Games, whatever they're called, and presumably also Matrix Games. This is a 4X grand strategy game that takes place in the rise of the Roman Republic era. So essentially, it starts just shortly after the death of Alexander the Great in 310 BC. The successor states to Alexander's empire are feuding for control of the great empire that he built up. Meanwhile, on the Italian peninsula, Italy is a small but rising republic. Rome is a small but rising republic. And across the ways in the Mediterranean, Carthage is a power to be reckoned with as well. And so this is a game that allows you to play as multiple different empires or republics in this period of time. It covers the period from essentially Rome's birth, or a little bit after, obviously, but from Rome's ascendancy to Rome reaching basically the pinnacle of its power. It doesn't seem to cover all the way through to Rome's fall, but it does have some really unique mechanics in the game that I think could allow your Roman Empire to fall in more than just a conquest game. There's a lot of Roman games out there, especially this day and age. Aggressor's Rise of Rome was a recent one that just came out. Paradox's Imperator is a game that's coming out. There have been multiple Total War Rome games. And I think what seems to potentially set this one apart, and obviously we don't know a ton yet, but the game is in beta, so you can actually sign up for the beta with Slytherin today if you want to participate. But I think one of the features that they talked about in their announcement stream, which really seems to sort of set it apart from other games, is this concept of decadence. And essentially what the description that we've had so far is that in Empires, in Field of Glory Empires, this game will basically when you're a small country, you don't have a lot to worry about as far as pleasing your population. As you grow, as your power grows, as your reach grows, then your population is going to expect luxuries or things to make their lives better, or just sort of the fruits of your dominance and your glory. And as you build those kinds of things, as you build a coliseum, as you build bathhouses or what have you, that as you grow, that will generate decadence. And this concept of decadence, I think, is very unique in a lot of these games. The Total War games might have sort of had it in their corruption mechanic, but to me, it feels like decadence is a little bit different. It's the kind of thing that can lead to instability in your empire, lead to the eventual decline of your empire. I mean, we often hear of the decadence of the Roman Empire as it reached its pinnacle. Its hubris became unbound around. Its desire to focus on the pleasures of life rather than the maintenance of its power led to its decline. At least that's one narrative that you often hear. And so this game seems to be trying to capture that, and they kind of talked about the ebb and flow of empires in their launch live stream, or in their announcement live stream. And so I think it's interesting to see what that really looks like. It's a 4X game, so it's going to have a lot of the typical 4X game things. You need to build your armies, you need to build up your cities, build up your economy, build trade networks. But one of the other interesting things that I think could really set this game apart is the battle system. So there's sort of two ways to resolve battles in Field of Glory 2, or not Field of Glory 2, Field of Glory Empires. And that is one way you can resolve battles is similar to an old Matrix game called Legion, which is when two armies meet on the field of battle, you'll be able to give them general directions on strategy, tactics, like how you want them to fight, maybe the intensity. I'm not really sure about all the details, but essentially you give them a general direction, and then you can watch the battle play out. You don't actually fight the battle, but you can watch the battle play out and see what happens. And then the other mechanism, so that's kind of traditional sort of grand strategy 4X, no real-time command of your forces or anything like that. And that's about what I guess I'd expect for this kind of a game. But one of the other things which is really cool that they've announced is they will also allow you to export your battles to Field of Glory 2. So if you own Field of Glory 2, which is kind of like a tabletop tactical war game, which is a very well done tabletop tactical war game, which came out last year, that allows you to model battles all throughout the ancient period of time, from historical battles to fictional battles. This game will have apparently an intuitive combat export system where when two armies meet, you can export that file directly into Field of Glory 2, boot up Field of Glory 2, fight the battle out on a tactical map in Field of Glory 2, which is a turn-based tactical combat, and then the results of that will be sent directly back over to your Field of Glory Empires game and allow you to continue the course of your game from there. So it's kind of interesting because it has this sort of hands-off auto-resolve with a movie essentially for you to watch to see what happens, or it allows you to actually get into the nitty-gritty and maybe fight a 30, 40, 50-minute or hour or 2-hour-long battle in Field of Glory 2, because Field of Glory 2 battles are very deep and take quite a bit of time. So that's kind of an interesting feature that could set it apart as well. Additionally, they're really trying to go all out with multiplayer. They're saying that I think up to 16 people will be able to play in a play-by-email plus multiplayer game, which is a Matrix or Slytherin version of play-by-email that just directly interfaces with the game software, so you don't have to send files back and forth in an email. Basically, you just play the game in multiplayer. It's turn-based, so you can do your turn whenever you want. You don't have to wait for someone else to be online. And then when everybody's done doing their turn, then you'll have a resolution of the actual turn. So that's another interesting thing. That's a lot of people to try and support in this kind of a game. I've done the play-by-email system that they have. It's pretty slick. It works pretty well, but I've never seen anyone play 16 people multiplayer on it. So that'll be a challenge and interesting to see how it plays out. Other than that, I feel like it's kind of the traditional 4X grand strategy game, but I do think that's these are some interesting components which make me pretty excited about this game, and something that I think definitely bears watching in 2019. So that was our third game on the list, Field of Glory Empires, by Matrix and Slytherin Games, and developed by Ajod. What's the fourth game on our list? What is number 2, the second to last game in this list? The next game on this list, I don't have any imagery from. I haven't seen any screenshots or anything like this released. My hope is that it's coming out this year, but I believe it's probably slated toward the end of this year. Some press releases suggest it should be coming out this year, though. And that game is Imperial Struggle. It's developed and published by Playdeck, or will be, but it's also kind of developed by GMT because it's going to be a board game that's going to be converted from a board game designed by or published by GMT and then put into a PC by Playdeck. Imperial Struggle is really interesting to me. It's a game that's not yet out on board game either, but it is a, it's basically the spiritual sequel to the Cold War game, which did already come to PC, called Twilight Struggle. And and I'll throw some screenshots from Twilight Struggle in here, but these are obviously not images from Imperial Struggle. But Twilight Struggle is a Cold War game. It's a board game conversion that allows you to play as either the Soviets or the Western Allies during the Cold War as you try and struggle for political domination over your adversary and win the Cold War. Imperial Struggle takes that concept and says, okay, it is now 1697 to 1789. It is the second 100 Years' War, as the game is describing it. It is the period of struggle between the French monarchy and the British Empire. The British Empire is rising to preeminence, but the French Empire is there as well. It is 1697. This is when Louis XIV, the Sun King, is emerging from a decade-long war and is not happy kind of where he's at, and he's trying to gain global preeminence. The British King, King William III, is also attempting to expand the British Empire, and so you have this period from 1697 till 1789, till the breakout of the French Revolution, where the French monarchy and the British monarchy are in a constant struggle for global supremacy. This is a period of time where India was not completely British. I mean, India had not been conquered by the British in this period of time, and the French had ports or influence in portions of India. You had the 7 Years' War take place between France and between Britain and the Americas, where there was this massive struggle, perhaps the First World War, which took place there over the fate of the New World, over the fate of the Americas. Who would dominate the Americas? Would it be the French or would it be the British? And so you take this period of time, which is ripe with conflict, ripe with colonial rivalry, and you say, all right, let's give it the Cold War treatment and see how this game plays out. And I'll be honest, guys, I'm not a huge board gamer. I don't play a ton of board games, but very few, in fact. But this game has really piqued my interest. The concept of a 100-year-long period of history between two of the world's most powerful, two of the world's two most powerful colonial empires in this period of time. I think it's fascinating, and I'm really excited to see how the PC conversion comes out. So that is my number 2. Or I guess number 4. I'm confusing everybody probably by how I'm jumping back and forth, but that's the 4th game on our top 5 most anticipated lists as we move forward to the final game here. And last but not least is Imperator Rome. It's being developed by Paradox Development Studio and published by Paradox Interactive. It will be the newest of the mainline IP games for Paradox. The game's developed in-house, and it is the spiritual successor to Europea Universalis Rome, which came out, over 10 years ago. This game is going to be focusing on a similar period of time as Field of Glory Empires. It's going to be starting in, I believe, 303 BC, so about 20 years, is it? Or 30 years after the death of Alexander the Great. It's going to cover the same period of time, so the rise of Rome. Rome is a small but strong Italian power. Carthage is a mighty power on the opposite shores of the Mediterranean, and then you've got the Greek successor states. But the key difference here is this is a Paradox game in the mold of something like Europea Universalis or Crusader Kings. This is going to be a game about deceit, about relationships, about backstabbing, about growing your empire, growing your power through any means necessary. And I think that in of itself is enough to get it on this list. There also appears to be some pretty interesting mechanics, which I'll talk about a little bit here in this video. This isn't strictly focused on Imperator, but I did think there were some pretty interesting mechanics that the game has announced that it will include. So, for example, obviously you've got to manage your characters, a wide degree of characters with different skills and traits. That's the Crusader Kings thing of managing your dynasty, basically. Additionally, there appears to be some unique population mechanics. It's going to have a wide variety of different types of citizens or classes therein. So you might have citizens, but Rome was also known for having tribesmen, slaves, different types of populations. They might have their own culture, their own religion. There's going to be battles abstracted as in the past, but the game is saying that you get to choose your strategies in those fights. So I don't know if there will be a replay of like functionality such as in Field of Glory. Like you won't be able to export it and fight them out tactically, but you will have to choose your tactics going into the battle, which will then result in potentially different outcomes. So that ability to choose your approach going into the fight is a little bit new for Europa Universalis. Most of their games, well, I shouldn't say EU because I haven't played a ton of EU, but in Crusader Kings, the battles are really pretty abstracted. If you get a little bit more control over that, that'll be kind of cool. Different government types, different military traditions. One of the things that really caught my eye is this population migration mechanic. So I think when we think of Rome and we think of migrating populations, we often think of the late Roman Empire with these large Germanic tribes that are being pressed into the Roman Empire and they overwhelm Rome's borders. But that wasn't the first time that happened in Roman history. During Caesar's campaign in Gaul, there were hundreds of thousands of Germanic tribes who were being pushed into Roman territories, and he had to fight against that or align with them and use them against the Gauls. It was not the first time ever that there were these large migrations of populations, and the game's going to have a mechanic for that. So I think that'll be pretty exciting to see as well. Trade's obviously important, and then the ability to improve your provinces. So I guess what I'm hoping for in this is a little bit more Crusader Kings and a little bit less of Hearts of Iron. And I really hope that they really double down on the relationship management, the ability to improve your states, maybe a little bit of power sharing or distribution. I'm curious how they're going to have the Senate interact with you. But overall, I'm excited about the game. It's did they announce a release date yet? I don't see a release date. I just see it coming soon on their product page. But this is a game that I'm also really excited about. So it'll be cool to see what they do with this. I think it's going to end kind of the early empire, so probably around the death of Augustus is my understanding. So the transition from the Republic to the Empire, but not really getting into the emperors. My hope is that this game comes out with some expansions later that allow you to carry it through to the reign of Marcus Aurelius, through to the crisis of the third century, and maybe even the fall of Rome. I think the population mechanics may enable that, but I guess only time will tell. Anyway, guys, I hope you're having a great start of your New Year's. That's going to be it for this list of top 5 most anticipated games. At I'll just list the 5 games out that we've discussed here today. The first game that we talked about was We the Revolution, a game that puts you in the shoes of a judge during the French Revolution and kind of is a very Papers, Please type game where you kind of have to manage your power, manage your relationships, and hopefully gain control of your future and your destiny and your family's future and destiny, and France's as well. You have Total War 3 Kingdoms, which is pretty straightforward to say. It's a Total War game taking place in France during the Romance of the Three Kingdoms period of time. You have Field of Glory Empires, which is a new game by Matrix and Slytherin Games made by Ajod, and it is a 4X grand strategy game which takes place during the rise of the Roman Republic into an empire. Has some interesting mechanics like the ability to export your battles into Field of Glory 2 and resolve them tactically. Imperial Struggle is basically the sequel to Twilight Struggle. It's a board game conversion, and it is coming out later this year, I believe, and it looks at the sort of the Cold War, or the Hot War, if you will, between France and the British Empire from the late 17th century through to the late 18th century, and culminates with the French Revolution and the overthrow of the French monarchy. And then Imperator, Rome, a new mainline IP game by Paradox Games, which allows you to play through the same period of time as Field of Glory Empires, essentially the early Republic, through to the conversion into the Empire of Rome, the successor states of the Greek Empire, and hopefully it comes with all the good things that we enjoy and love about Paradox Games, namely the relationship management, the politics, the backstabbing, and just the sheer vibrancy and living world that exists in Paradox Xbox games. With that being said, that's enough of me rambling to you guys today. Let me know if you agree with this list or if there are games you feel like I missed out. Additionally, if you didn't see it, I had my top 5 wargaming games that are coming out in 2019, which posted yesterday. I'll throw a link to the description as well if you'd like to see the 5 war games that I'm the most excited about in 2019. With that being said, guys, until next time, this is the Historical Gamer saying thank you for watching, and I'm out.